charming a girl in 60 seconds. That became my hallmark. Literally in a session, I would get like 30 numbers from very attractive women.
No, talk for a second. I don't know, because you're cute. You have good energy.
Afterwards, I coached. Sleeping with a woman is stacking many subtle behaviors end to end. A lot of confidence and alpha male behavior and proactivity is knowing that it's my right to go after this girl. There was no emotional register. I was an executor.
Welcome back. That was a clip from the new documentary giving audiences a closer look at the billion-dollar pickup industry, an industry that promises men the tools to score any women they choose.
Our next guest is a dating and personal development coach who appeared in the documentary. So please welcome from the pickup game, Minnie Lane.
Welcome. So let's dive into this, because this documentary uncovers this sort of little known and yet huge and thriving underground pickup artist industry. Give us some points of what you learned and what people need to know about this industry.
Okay, so it's like a multi-million-dollar global industry, predominantly males teaching other males how to pick up women through large workshops. It's the whole industry isn't bad, but there is a really, really dark side of it, where people are literally teaching emotional and psychological manipulation of women.
Wow. Okay, so let's talk about this. What is the difference to you about between pickup artists and what you do as a dating coach, for example?
So it's kind of the polar opposite, actually, because pickup will teach men to sort of create this like alpha male type character that's not really them. So it's all false, and it actually teaches them to disconnect from their emotions and pretend to be something that they're not. Whereas a good dating coach or a relationship coach will actually help people to connect more with their true selves and create genuine, honest connections with others.
So who are the men who are drawn to this industry? I can't even call it an industry. And what happens? Like, what kind of community do they find there?
Well, it attracts all kinds of men. Some men just wanting a little bit of help talking to women. Dating is hard, but it also attracts some very isolated people who are seriously lacking in a human connection and can be very lonely as well. And unfortunately, those are the men who are most susceptible to the sort of brainwashing that goes on in some parts of the industry, and that sort of groupthink mentality.
The fact is, though, that some of these techniques work on women. So, and there are those who maybe can think like, okay, well, if it works on women, then, why shouldn't we do this? So what would you say to that?
Well, I would say if it gets results, it doesn't work. But, women need to be careful because the techniques can be very subtle at first. They're built from NLP and hypnosis, so they're designed to go
linguistic programming.
Right. So they're designed to go straight into subconscious. So I don't think women are to blame for falling for it, but also there are some things that women can do because the techniques do work best on women who are very insecure. So I really encourage women to work on their own self-development and become more secure, just so that they're less susceptible to the techniques, and also to be careful of how much they're drinking and stuff like that, so that they're not putting themselves in vulnerable positions unnecessarily.
The language that these instructors use, though, is really intense. And I would say, downright violent. Women are referred to as targets, or they're referred to as marks. Can you break down some of the other techniques that are used?
Yeah, okay, so an example of a very popular technique is negging, which is giving someone backhanded compliments. So you might say, oh, you smell really good. It reminds me of my grandma. Or, I really love your dress. I saw another girl wearing it earlier.
So it chips away at the confidence.
Exactly. So it might seem ridiculous, but actually these are designed to chip away at a girl's self-esteem.
Wow. Okay. So in the film, you explained that you started in this business because you initially wanted to help guys get some confidence, that they needed to speak to women and approach women. But you quickly discovered that these workshops, a lot of them can quickly turn into very intense female objectification in an intense way as well. So tell us a little bit about how you discovered that side of the business.
Yeah, so it can start with very small, sort of subtle ways of objectifying women. I think referring to their attractiveness in terms of numbers, rating their attractiveness, and calling them targets. And I think a lot of guys will think, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. But actually, it can be a very slippery slope into some really dark places and some quite horrific treatment of women. And I think the documentary does a really good job at showing how slippery that slope can be, especially when there is this sort of group mentality.
The pickup industry is not a startup. It's thriving, right? It's making lots of money. How is it thriving in the Me Too era?
Yeah, well, I think it's important first to say that not everybody in the industry is teaching sexual harassment, but some guys are, and I hope that Me Too will help raise awareness, that will help people spot red flags early, and also empower women to speak out when they feel uncomfortable. But I think, unfortunately, the worst parts of this industry will probably survive Me Too because they'll just repackage it as something else. Some of these guys are very talented salesmen, and they can sort of be very convincing and persuasive.
I can understand how, here's a problem, is that we still live in this situation whereby in heterosexual relationships, the onus is predominantly on the guys to make the first move, right? That's the setup that we still have, even though I rail against it all the time. And so when you've got this setup, there are going to be inevitably guys who feel social anxiety, who are shy, who are quiet, and still want to meet women. So if they want to do that, what other ways can they actually learn how to be more charismatic or have more confidence?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because this whole industry was started by someone who was so bad at attracting women that he had to resort to NLP and hypnosis to get any attention from women at all. And you do wonder why guys would go to someone like that for advice. But it's because if you get someone who's naturally attractive to women, they'll just say, oh, just be yourself. And that is the truth. You really do need to be yourself, but it's not enough to just tell someone to be themselves, because if they knew how to be themselves, they already would be. So you have to show them, and really helping somebody to work out who they are, work out what they want, develop their self-worth from the inside, recognize their own value, strengthen their own value, learn how to build deep rapport through conversation with people, learn body language, learn how to process and understand their emotions properly. And these are things that I actually think we should be teaching in schools because it's so bad. Thank you. It's really tragic that a lot of people, not just men, enter adulthood with really no idea how to build proper connections with other people.
Yeah, and with that in mind, I look at this and think the core here is manipulation. Men are being manipulated into, subscribing to these courses, going there and being promised all sorts of things. And then women are as well. And as you mentioned, maybe we need to start the education sooner. So a word or two about educating both our boys and girls with regards to this kind of thing.
As in, what can you do?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think awareness is the first step, and I really encourage women and men to watch the documentary so that women can spot the difference earlier between a good guy and a bad guy. And I think we need to also make sure it doesn't go too far. And I would encourage women and tell your daughters not to be scared of men, because we don't want to end up in a world where men are scared to talk to women. I heard someone say on a chat show the other day that it's completely unacceptable for a man to approach a woman in a public place. And I think, well, that's not a world that I want to live in. I met one of my best friends in the park that way last summer. And I think it's about empowering women to set their own boundaries, know where their boundaries are, and be comfortable speaking up when they feel uncomfortable. And also teaching men to just be more aware, be able to read body language so that they can understand women a bit better and understand their boundaries too and not push them.
Minnie, thank you very much for being here today, for sharing such powerful information. The Pickup Game is currently screening at the 2019 Hot Docs Festival right here in Toronto. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Next week on The Social,